Commander Jake Morrison walked slowly through the bright white hallways of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station. The sound of his boots echoed in the quiet building. He had been doing this same walk every morning for the past 5 years, and each day felt exactly like the one before it. The station sat on a hill in Nevada, far from any city, where the night sky was dark and clear. Jake stopped at the large window that looked out over the desert. In the distance, he could see the massive radio dishes pointed toward the stars. Those dishes had been sending messages into space for 30 years now. 30 long years of talking to empty space, hoping someone would talk back. So far, nobody. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was already at her desk when Jake walked into the main control room. She looked tired, like she always did these days. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the same blue jumpsuit that everyone at the station wore. She was listening to headphones, checking the night's transmissions. "Anything interesting?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. Amy shook her head without looking up. "Same as always. We sent out the usual package last night. Music. From Beethoven, pictures of Earth, basic math, the periodic table, all broadcast on 14 different frequencies." She pulled off her headphones and rubbed her eyes. "And just like every other night for the past 30 years, we got nothing back." Jake poured himself coffee from the machine in the corner. The coffee was terrible, but it was hot and had caffeine. "Maybe today will be different," he said, but his voice had no hope in it. Captain Lisa Harper walked into the room carrying a stack of papers. She was new to the station, transferred in just 3 months ago from a military base in Colorado. She still believed that their work might actually matter. Jake remembered feeling that way once, a long time ago. "I've been reading the old reports," Lisa said, setting the papers down on the main table. "We've been broadcasting the same basic message package for decades. Music, art, science, literature, everything we think shows how smart and peaceful we are." "That's the idea," Amy said. "Show them we're civilized. Show them we're worth talking to." Lisa picked up one of the reports and flipped through it. "But what if they don't care about any of that? What if they're not impressed by our math or our music?" Jake sat down at his desk and turned on his computer. The morning routine was always the same. Check the overnight logs, review the transmission, schedule, prepare the day's broadcast package. "The scientists who designed these messages are much smarter than we are," he said. "They know what they're doing." "Do they?" Lisa asked. "Because it's been 30 years and we haven't heard so much as a whisper back." Amy stood up and walked to the big screen that showed a map of the galaxy. Little dots marked all the places where Earth's messages had been sent. There were thousands of dots. "Maybe we really are alone," she said quietly. "Maybe there's nobody out there to hear us." The idea scared all of them, though none of them would say it out loud. Earth had been sending messages to the stars since the 1970s, but this station represented humanity's most serious attempt at contact. The best scientists, the most powerful transmitters, the clearest messages they could create. If this didn't work, maybe nothing would. Jake opened the overnight transmission log on his computer. "We broadcast to the Kepler 442 system last night," he said. "That's a star about 1 to 200 light-years away. The planets there might be able to support life, and in 1-200 years someone there might hear what we said last night," Lisa said. "And in another 1-200 years we might hear them say something back, if they decide to answer, if they're even there." "That's how it works," Amy said. "Space is big, really big. Even if someone wants to talk to us, it takes time." Lisa looked at the transmission schedule for the day. "So today we send the same package to a different star system. Tomorrow we do it again. Next week we do it again. And we just hope that someday somewhere someone is listening and decides we're worth answering. That's the job," Jake said. He had said those same words hundreds of times over the years. To new staff members, to visiting officials, to himself when he woke up at 3 in the morning wondering if his life had any meaning. The truth was, Jake had stopped believing years ago. Not that there was life out there in the universe. He still believed that. Space was too big and had too many stars for Earth to be the only place with life. But he had stopped believing that any of that life cared about humanity. Why should they? Earth was just one small planet around one ordinary star in a galaxy full of billions of stars. Amy walked back to her desk and put her headphones back on. "I'm going to review yesterday's broadcast," she said. "Make sure everything went out correctly." Jake knew she would find that everything had gone perfectly, just like every other day. The equipment at the station was the best humanity could build. The messages were clear and strong. The problem wasn't with their technology. The problem was that nobody seemed to care enough to answer. Lisa sat down at her desk and opened her laptop. "I've been thinking about something," she said. "All our messages are so formal, so official, like we're writing a letter to impress a teacher or something." "What do you mean?" Amy asked, pulling off one side of her headphones. "I mean, listen to this," Lisa said, reading from one of the reports. "Greetings from the people of Earth. We are a peaceful species seeking knowledge and friendship among the stars. We offer these transmissions as examples of our culture, science, and art." Jake looked up from his computer. "What's wrong with that?" "It sounds like a business letter," Lisa said. "It's boring. If I got a message like that, I might not bother answering either." Amy frowned. "So what do you think we should say instead?" Lisa shrugged. "I don't know. Something more real, maybe. Something that shows who we really are, not just what we want aliens to think about us." The message format was designed by linguists and anthropologists, Jake said. "People who know about communication and culture. They know better than we do what might work." "Maybe," Lisa said. "But it hasn't worked yet." The three of them worked quietly for the next few hours. Jake reviewed equipment maintenance reports. Amy prepared the evening's transmission to a star system called Gliese 667c. Lisa read through more old files, trying to understand why 30 years of effort had produced nothing. At noon, they took a break for lunch in the small cafeteria. The station only had about 20 people working there, so the cafeteria was really just a room with some tables and a microwave. Most people brought sandwiches from home. "I had a dream last night," Amy said as she unwrapped her sandwich. "I dreamed that we got an answer. A real message from aliens." "What did they say?" Lisa asked. Amy smiled sadly. "Hello, we got your message. Thanks for telling us about Earth, you seem nice." She took a bite of her sandwich. "Even in my dreams, they're more polite than most people I know." Jake laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "At least in your dreams," they answered. They finished lunch and went back to work. The afternoon was like every other afternoon. Check equipment, prepare transmissions, review logs, write reports. At 5 o'clock, the day shift ended, and the night shift took over. Jake, Amy, and Lisa drove home to the small town 20 miles away where most of the station staff lived. That evening, Jake sat on his porch and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth's messages were traveling through space at the speed of light. Maybe someone would hear them someday. Maybe someone would care enough to answer, but probably not. It was a Thursday evening in October when everything changed. Ben Stevens was working the night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Station. He had been there for 2 years, and like everyone else, he had gotten used to the quiet routine. Check the equipment, monitor the transmissions, write down what happened, and go home in the morning. Ben was 26 years old and had studied electronics in college. He was good with computers and radio equipment, which made him perfect for the job. He liked working nights because it was peaceful. During the day, there were always meetings and visitors and people asking questions. At night, it was just him and the machines and the stars. The station had a small workshop next to the main building where technicians fixed broken equipment. Rick Wells worked there during the day, repairing radio parts and maintaining the big dishes outside. Rick was a quiet man who had worked at the station for 8 years. He lived in town with his 8-year-old daughter, Katie. Rick's wife had died in a car accident the year before. Since then, he sometimes brought Katie to work with him during school holidays when he couldn't find anyone to watch her. She would sit in the workshop and draw pictures or read books while her father worked. Everyone at the station knew Katie and liked her, She was a cheerful little girl with blonde hair and bright blue eyes. On this particular Thursday, Rick had brought Katie to work because her babysitter was sick. Katie had finished her homework and was getting bored sitting in the workshop. Her father was busy fixing a complicated piece of equipment and wasn't paying attention to what she was doing. Katie wandered around the workshop, looking at all the interesting machines and tools. In one corner, there was an old radio that Rick used to test equipment. Katie had seen her father use it many times. She knew which buttons to push to make it work. What Katie didn't know was that this radio was connected to the station's main transmission system. Rick used it to send test signals to the big dishes outside, but Katie didn't understand any of that. She just saw a microphone and thought it might be fun to pretend she was on the radio like the people she heard in her father's truck. Ben was in the main control room, drinking coffee and watching the screens that showed the evening's transmission to a star system called Wolf 359. Everything was going normally. The automated system was sending out the usual package of music, mathematics, and pictures. Ben had seen the same transmission hundreds of times before. Then something strange appeared. On his screen, the transmission signal suddenly got stronger, and there was something else mixed in with the regular broadcast. Ben put on his headphones and listened carefully. What he heard made him sit up straight in his chair. It was a child's voice. "Hello? Is anybody out there?" Ben quickly checked all his equipment. Everything looked normal, but the child's voice was definitely being broadcast along with the regular transmission. He turned up the volume and listened. "My name is Katie and I'm 8 years old. I don't know if anyone can hear me, but I wanted to try talking to you." Ben's hands moved quickly over his control panel, trying to figure out where the voice was coming from. The signal was coming from inside the station, from the workshop next door. "I live on Earth with my dad," Katie's voice continued. "Earth is a really pretty planet. We have blue oceans and green trees and lots of different animals. Do you have animals where you live?" Ben grabbed his radio and called Rick Wells. "Rick, are you in the workshop?" "Yeah, I'm here." Rick's voice came back. "Why? Is Katie with you?" "She's right here drawing pictures." "Why?" Ben looked at his screens again. The child's voice was still being transmitted into space along with the regular broadcast. "Rick, you need to check your test radio right now." There was a pause. Then Ben heard Rick's voice in the background saying, "Katie, what are you doing?" "I lost my mom last year." Katie's voice continued over the transmission. "Dad says she's watching from the stars now. If there's anyone up there, could you tell her I miss her, and that I'm trying to be brave like she taught me?" Ben heard footsteps running in the hallway outside the control room. A few seconds later, Rick burst through the door looking panicked. "Ben, I'm so sorry," Rick said. "Katie was playing with the test radio. I didn't realize she had turned it on." "She's broadcasting to space," Ben said, pointing at his screens. "Her voice is going out with tonight's transmission to Wolf 359. Rick's face went white. "Oh no, is that bad? Can we get in trouble for this?" Ben was already working to isolate the signal from the workshop. "I'm shutting it down now," he said. He flipped several switches, and Katie's voice disappeared from the transmission. Rick ran back to the workshop to get Katie. Ben could hear him explaining to her that she wasn't supposed to touch the radio equipment. Katie started crying, thinking she was in big trouble. Ben looked at his transmission log. Katie's voice had been broadcast for exactly 93 seconds. Her innocent words had traveled out into space at the speed of light, mixed in with humanity's official message to the stars. A few minutes later, Rick came back to the control room with Katie. She was still sniffling and looked scared. "I'm sorry," she said to Ben. "I didn't mean to break anything." Ben knelt down so he was at Katie's eye level. "You didn't break anything," he said gently. "But that radio is connected to some very important equipment. You can't play with it, okay?" Katie nodded. "I just wanted to see if anyone would talk. Back to me." "I know," Ben said. "But we have special ways of talking to space, and we have to be very careful about what we say." Rick picked up Katie and held her. "We should go home," he said to Ben. "I'm really sorry about this. I'll make sure it doesn't happen again." After Rick and Katie left, Ben sat alone in the control room and thought about what had happened. He would have to write a report about the incident. His supervisor would want to know exactly what went wrong and how to prevent it from happening again. But as Ben wrote his report, he couldn't stop thinking about Katie's words. Her voice had been so different from the formal official messages that the station broadcast every day. She hadn't talked about mathematics or science or human achievements. She had just talked like a regular person, like a child who missed her mother and wanted to know if anyone else was out there. Ben finished his report and filed it in the computer system. He marked it as a minor security breach that required additional safety protocols. He recommended that all test equipment be disconnected from the main transmission system when not in use. What Ben didn't write in his report was how Katie's simple, honest words had affected him. For the first time in 2 years of working at the station, he had heard something broadcast into space that sounded real, something that came from the heart instead of from a committee of scientists. The next morning, Ben went home to his small apartment in town. He lived alone, and usually spent his days off watching television or reading, but that day he couldn't stop thinking about Katie's voice and her words about missing her mother. Ben had never thought much about what it would be like to receive one of Earth's transmissions. He had always focused on the technical side of sending them out. But if he were an alien living on another planet, what would he think of humanity's formal, polite messages? Maybe Lisa Harper had been right. Maybe their messages were too much like business letters, too official, too careful, too designed to impress rather than to communicate. Katie hadn't been trying to impress anyone. She had just been a little girl talking to the stars, hoping someone might hear her and understand that she missed her mother. There was something powerful about that honesty, something that all of humanity's carefully crafted messages seemed to lack. Ben fell asleep that afternoon thinking about Katie's words traveling through space toward Wolf 359. In about 24 years, her voice would reach that star system. If anyone was there to hear it, they would hear something very different from Earth's usual transmissions. They would hear the voice of a child who was trying to be brave. 3 months had passed since Katie's accidental broadcast. Life at the Deep Space Monitoring Station had returned to normal. Rick Wells had installed new locks on all the test equipment in his workshop. Katie still came to work with her father, sometimes, but now she brought coloring books and stayed far away from anything with buttons or switches. Ben Stevens had almost forgotten about the incident. He still worked the night shift, and every evening was the same routine. Check the equipment, monitor the outgoing transmissions, and watch the empty space where incoming signals should be. 3 months of normal, quiet nights had made Katie's broadcast seem like a small, unimportant event. It was a cold January morning when everything changed forever. Ben was getting ready to end his shift at 6 o'clock. The sun was starting to come up over the desert, and the day shift would arrive soon. He was finishing his final equipment check when something made him stop and look at his screen more carefully. There was a signal coming in. Ben stared at the screen for a long moment, not believing what he was seeing. In 30 years of operation, the station had never received an intentional signal from space. They got noise from distant stars and radiation from space storms, but never anything that looked like a message from another civilization. But this was definitely a message. The signal was too organized, too structured to be natural. Someone was trying to talk to Earth. Ben's hands were shaking as he put on his headphones and adjusted the signal processors. The message was weak, but it was there. He could hear sounds. That might be words, but they were mixed with static and interference from the long journey through space. Ben worked quickly to clean up the signal. He had been trained for this moment, but he had never really believed it would happen. As the static cleared away, he began to hear something that made his heart race. It was a voice, not human, but definitely a voice trying to speak English. Small voice in the dark. "We hear you. You are not alone." Ben played the message 3 times to make sure he had heard it correctly. Then he reached for the red phone on his desk, the one that was only supposed to be used in emergencies. His supervisor, Commander Jake Morrison, answered on the second ring. "Jake, you need to get here right now," Ben said, trying to keep his voice steady. "What's wrong?" Jake asked. "Is there a problem with the equipment?" "We got an answer," Ben said. There was a long pause. "What do you mean we got an answer?" I mean, someone answered us. From space. There's a message coming in right now. Jake was quiet for so long that Ben thought the phone had gone dead. Finally, Jake spoke. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't touch anything. Don't call anyone else. Just wait for me. Ben sat at his desk and listened to the message over and over. The voice was strange, with sounds that no human could make, but the English words were clear enough. Small voice in the dark. We hear you. You are not alone. Jake arrived at the station faster than Ben had ever seen anyone drive on the desert roads. He was still wearing pajamas under his jacket, and his hair was messy from sleep. Amy Rodriguez was with him, also looking like she had just jumped out of bed. Play it, Jake said as soon as he walked into the control room. Ben played the message. Jake and Amy listened with their eyes closed, concentrating on every sound. Play it again, Amy said. They listened to it 5 more times. Then Amy sat down, had her computer, and began analyzing the signal patterns while Jake called his superiors in Washington. The message is definitely artificial, Amy said after an hour of work. It's not coming from any natural source. Someone built a transmitter and sent this to us on purpose. Where did it come from? Jake asked. Amy pointed to her screen, which showed a map of nearby star systems. Based on the signal direction and timing, it came from the general direction of Wolf 359. The same system we were broadcasting to when Katie spoke. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Katie's message. They heard Katie's message. Ben nodded. That has to be it. They didn't respond to 30 years of our official transmissions, but they heard Katie talking about missing her mother, and they decided to answer. By noon, the station was full of people. Scientists flew in from universities around the world. Government officials arrived in black cars with tinted windows. Military officers set up secure communication equipment. The quiet desert station had become the most important place on Earth. Dr. Elena Martinez arrived from the University of California with a team of linguists. She was one of the world's leading experts on communication with unknown civilizations. She listened to the alien message dozens of times, analyzing every sound. The grammar is simple but correct, she explained to the assembled group. They're using basic English sentence structure. But listen to the way they pronounce certain sounds. No human vocal system could make those exact tones. General Robert Hayes flew in from the Pentagon to coordinate the government's response. He was a serious man who asked hard questions about security and potential threats. How do we know they're friendly? He asked. This could be some kind of trick. Amy looked up from her computer. The message content suggests peaceful intentions. They're responding to a child who is sad about losing her mother. The words they chose were meant to comfort, not threaten. Jake found himself thinking about Katie Wells, the little girl who had accidentally started the most important conversation in human history was at school, probably doing math problems and eating lunch with her friends. She had no idea that her simple, honest words had finally broken through 30 years of cosmic silence. We need to send a response, Dr. Martinez said. They've opened communication. We can't just ignore that. What do we say? Jake asked. The room full of experts began debating the proper response. Some wanted to send formal diplomatic greetings. Others suggested sharing scientific information to prove humanity's intelligence. A few thought they should invite the aliens to visit Earth. But Ben Stevens, who had been quiet during all the discussions, finally spoke up. Maybe we should let Katie answer them. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. General Hayes frowned. That's not appropriate. This is a matter of national security. But they didn't respond to our national security messages, Ben said. They responded to Katie. She's the one who got their attention. Amy nodded slowly. Ben might be right. For 30 years we've been sending them what we thought they wanted to hear. Official messages full of science and culture and diplomacy. But they ignored all of that. The only message that got a response was from an 8-year-old girl talking about missing her mother. Dr. Martinez looked thoughtful. There's something to be said for that approach. Katie's message was genuine. It came from emotion, not from committee planning. Maybe that's what made it special. The debate continued for hours. Some people thought it was crazy to let a child handle first contact with an alien civilization. Others argued that Katie's approach had already succeeded where decades of expert planning had failed. Finally, Jake made the decision that would change his career and possibly human history. We'll craft an official response to send first, but then we'll also let Katie know what happened and see if she wants to say something too. General Hayes was not happy with this plan, but he was overruled by the civilian scientists who pointed out that traditional diplomatic approaches had already failed for 3 decades. The official response took 6 hours to write and approve. It was polite and careful, thanking the aliens for their message and expressing humanity's desire for peaceful contact. But even as they worked on it, everyone in the room knew it sounded just like all the other messages that had gotten no response for 30 years. That afternoon, Jake and Amy drove to Katie's school. They found her in the playground during recess playing on the swings with her friends. When they told her what had happened, Katie's eyes got very wide. "Someone really heard me?" she asked. "Yes," Amy said. "Someone from very far away heard you, talking about your mother, and they sent a message back to tell you that you're not alone." Katie thought about this for a moment. "Can I talk to them again? Would you like to?" Katie nodded seriously. "I want to say thank you for listening to me." That evening, after the official response had been transmitted, Katie sat in the station's recording booth with her father beside her. She wasn't nervous or scared. She just spoke into the microphone like she was talking to a friend. "Hi, it's Katie again. Thank you for telling me I'm not alone. That made me feel better. I hope you're not alone either. Maybe we can be friends and talk sometimes. I'd like that." Her message was simple and short, less than 30 seconds. But as it traveled into space toward Wolf 3 of 59, carrying the voice of a child who had accidentally changed the world, everyone at the station knew they had just sent something more powerful than all their scientific achievements combined. They had sent the human heart itself into the stars. The next few days were busy at the station. More scientists arrived to study the alien message. Engineers worked to improve the equipment for better communication. Government officials held meetings about how to handle the situation. But Katie went back to her normal routine. She went to school, played with her friends, and did her homework. The only difference was that now she knew someone out there among the stars was listening to her. 2 weeks later, another message came in. This time, it was addressed directly to Katie. 2 weeks after Katie's second message to space, the alien response came back faster than anyone expected. This time, the signal was stronger and clearer. When Ben Stevens played the message in the control room, everyone could hear it perfectly. "Hello, Katie. We are glad you want to be friends. We have children too, and they also miss people they love. We would like to talk more if that is okay." The voice was still strange, with sounds that no human could make. But the English was getting better. Someone out there was working hard to learn how to talk to a little girl from Earth. Katie had become famous around the world. News reporters came to the small town where she lived, wanting to interview the child who had made first contact with aliens. But Katie's father, Rick, kept her away from most of them. He wanted his daughter to have a normal life, or as normal as possible when you were the most important 8-year-old in human history. Commander Jake Morrison had been promoted and now reported directly to the president. The Deep Space Monitoring Station had tripled in size, with new buildings and equipment appearing every week. Scientists from every country on Earth wanted to be part of the project. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was now the head of the Alien Communication Department, a job that had never existed before Katie's first broadcast. She worked with teams of linguists, anthropologists, and psychologists to understand what the aliens were trying to tell them. But the most important member of the team was still Katie Wells. The aliens, who called themselves the healers, only wanted to talk to her. They answered questions from other humans politely, but their real conversations were always with Katie. Katie visited the station every day after school now. She had her own small office with a comfortable chair and a microphone connected to the most powerful transmitters on Earth. The walls were covered with her drawings, including pictures of what she thought the healers might look like. "Tell me about your children," Katie said during one of her daily conversations with Space. She was getting used to the delay. It took almost 50 minutes for her words to reach Wolf 359, and another 50 minutes for the answer to come back. When the response came, Katie was doing homework at her desk. Amy called her to the microphone when the healer's message arrived. "Our children are different from you," the alien voice said. "They do not have bodies like yours, but they feel sad when someone they love goes away, just like you felt sad about your mother. They would like to meet you someday." Katie smiled and spoke into the microphone. "I would like to meet them too. Do they go to school like I do?" These conversations went on for weeks. Katie learned that the healers lived on several planets around different stars. They spent their time helping other species and fixing things that were broken. They had been listening to Earth's broadcasts for many years but had thought humans were too serious and formal to be good friends. "Your official messages were hard to understand," they explained to Katie one day. "They used big words and talked about important things, but they did not talk about feelings. We did not know humans had feelings like ours until we heard you missing your mother." Katie told them about school and her friends and her father's work at the station. She asked them about their planets and their families and what they liked to do for fun. It was like having a pen pal, except her pen pal lived among the stars. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy about Earth's new friendship with the healers. Captain Lisa Harper, now working as Earth's military coordinator for alien contact, received the first warning on a Tuesday morning in March. The message came through the same channels the healers used, but the voice was different, colder and more mechanical. "Attention, Earth creatures. You have attracted unwanted attention with your broadcasts. The Devourer Horde has heard your transmissions and marked your system for consumption. Prepare your defenses. This is your only warning." Lisa immediately called Jake and Amy into an emergency meeting. They played the message for Katie during her afternoon visit, wanting to know if she recognized the voice. "That's not my friends," Katie said, looking scared for the first time since the conversations had started. "My friends sound warm, like they're smiling when they talk. This voice sounds angry." Jake contacted the healers directly asking about the threat. The response came back 18 hours later, and it was the first time they had ever heard worry in the alien voice. "The Devourers are not like us," the healers explained. "They travel from star to star, taking everything from planets and leaving nothing behind. They consume not just resources but the life energy of entire civilizations. We have fought them before, but we are not warriors. We are healers." Amy felt a chill as she translated the full meaning of the message. "They're saying, this Devourer Horde destroys entire planets, and Katie's broadcasts have attracted their attention. Can the healers protect us?" Lisa asked. The next response from the healers was not encouraging. "We can offer sanctuary to some of your people on our worlds, but we cannot defend your entire planet. Our ships are designed for healing and helping, not for fighting. We are sorry, Katie. We did not know that talking to us would put you in danger." Katie was quiet for a long time after hearing this message. She sat in her office at the station, drawing pictures and thinking. Finally, she asked to send a message to her friends. "It's not your fault," she told the healers. "You didn't know the bad guys would hear us too. But we can't let them hurt people just because I wanted to make friends. There has to be something we can do." Over the next few days, more alien civilizations began contacting Earth. They had all heard Katie's conversations with the healers, and they were all concerned about the approaching threat. The crystal beings from Arcturus Prime sent mathematical equations that showed the size and power of the Devourer Horde. The machine intelligence from the Andromeda Galaxy offered technical assistance to build better defenses. Even civilizations that had never spoken to each other before were suddenly working together because of Katie's simple desire for friendship. Katie listened to all the new voices talking to Earth, but she seemed sad instead of excited. Amy found her sitting alone in her office one afternoon, not drawing or playing, just staring out the window at the desert. "What's wrong, Katie?" Amy asked, sitting down beside her. "Everyone is scared because of me," Katie said. "The bad guys are coming because I talked to my friends, and now all these other people are worried too. I just wanted to tell my mom I missed her." Amy put her arm around Katie's shoulders. You didn't do anything wrong, you brought the galaxy together. All these different civilizations are talking to each other for the first time because of you. But they're only talking because they're scared of the bad guys. Maybe that's how friendships sometimes start, Amy said. Sometimes people come together when there's trouble, and then they realize they like each other. Katie thought about this. Do you think the bad guys have friends? I don't know. Why? Well, if they had friends, maybe they wouldn't want to hurt people. Maybe they're just lonely and angry because nobody talks to them. Amy stared at Katie, amazed by the 8-year-old's way of thinking. Katie, the Devourers have destroyed entire civilizations. They're not just lonely, they're dangerous. But what if they are lonely? Katie insisted. What if they're mean because they don't have any friends? Maybe if someone was nice to them, they would stop being so angry. That evening, Katie asked to send another message to space. But this time, she didn't address it to the healers or any of Earth's new alien friends. She addressed it to the Devourer horde. Jake and Lisa tried to stop her, but Amy argued that Katie's approach had worked before when nothing else had. Hello, Katie said into the microphone, her voice small but brave. I know you're coming to hurt us because we made friends with other people, but that's not right. Everyone should have friends. Everyone should have someone who cares about them. Maybe if you had friends, you wouldn't want to hurt people anymore. She paused, then continued. I don't know why you're so angry, but I know what it's like to lose someone you love. It hurts a lot, but hurting other people doesn't make the hurt go away. It just makes more people sad. Katie took a deep breath. If you want to talk instead of fight, I'll listen to you. My mom taught me that everyone deserves someone who will listen to them. Even if you've done bad things, maybe you just need a friend. The message was transmitted with more power than anything Earth had ever broadcast. It went out in all directions, carried by every transmitter on the planet. Katie's voice, offering friendship to the most feared civilization in the galaxy, traveled toward the approaching Devourer horde at the speed of light. In the control room, everyone was quiet. They had just heard an 8-year-old girl try to stop an interstellar war with kindness. Nobody knew if it would work, but they all knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. Katie looked up at the adults around her. Do you think they'll listen? She asked. Jake knelt down beside her chair. I don't know, Katie, but I'm proud of you for trying. Mom always said that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are scared. Katie smiled. I'm really scared, but I think trying to help them is the right thing to do. Outside the station, under the stars that no longer seemed empty and silent, Katie's latest message began its journey across the galaxy. For 3 days after Katie's message to the Devourer horde, nothing happened. The space around Earth was quiet. No new transmissions came in, no responses from the feared civilization that was supposedly heading toward the solar system. Katie went to school like normal, but she seemed worried. She kept asking Amy Rodriguez if there had been any messages, and each time Amy had to say no. The adults at the Deep Space Monitoring Station were worried too, but they tried not to show it. On the 4th day, everything changed. It was Ben Stevens who first noticed the signal. He was working the night shift, like he had been doing for years, when his equipment started showing something unusual. At first, he thought it might be interference from a solar storm or a problem with the machines. But as he studied the readings more carefully, Ben realized he was looking at something he had never seen before. The signal was huge, much stronger than anything the healers had ever sent. It was coming from the direction where the Devourer horde was supposed to be approaching Earth. Ben called Jake Morrison immediately. You need to get here right now, he said. There's something big coming in. Jake arrived at the station 20 minutes later, followed by Amy and Captain Lisa Harper. They all crowded around Ben's screens, trying to understand what they were seeing. The signal is massive, Ben explained. It's at least 10 times stronger than anything we've received before. And it's not just a simple message. There are layers of different transmissions all mixed together. Amy put on headphones and listened to the incoming signal. At first, all she could hear was static and strange electronic sounds, but gradually she began to pick out voices. Not just one voice, but dozens of them all speaking at the same time. There are multiple transmitters, she said, adjusting the controls to separate the different signals. It's like a whole fleet of ships is broadcasting together. Jake felt his heart rate increase. The Devourer horde. They're here. But as Amy continued working with the signal, something strange became clear. The voices didn't sound angry or threatening. They sounded confused, almost lost. Listen to this, Amy said, playing one of the clearer transmissions. The voice that came through the speakers was unlike anything they had heard before. It was deep and mechanical, but there was something else in it. Something that almost sounded like sadness. Small one who speaks to the void, the voice said. We have heard your words. We do not understand them. Katie had been called to the station as soon as the signals started coming in. She sat in her small office listening to the strange voices with wide eyes. We have traveled between stars for longer than your species has existed, another voice said. We have consumed worlds and civilizations. It is what we do. It is what we are. But you speak of friendship. You speak of caring. These are concepts we do not comprehend. Katie looked at Amy. They sound sad, she said quietly. They sound dangerous, Lisa said from across the room. But Katie shook her head. No, they sound lonely. Really, really lonely. More voices joined the transmission. Katie learned that the Devourer horde wasn't just one species, but a collection of different civilizations that had been forced together long ago. They had been wandering through space for thousands of years, taking what they needed to survive, but never finding a home. We remember having worlds once, one voice said. We remember caring for things, but that was before the Great Hunger began, before we learned that taking was easier than growing. Katie listened to story after story. The Devourers told her about planets they had lost to disasters, about families that had been separated, about centuries of wandering through empty space with no purpose except survival. You ask why we are angry, another voice said. We are angry because we have forgotten how to be anything else. We consume because we have forgotten how to create. We destroy because we have forgotten how to build. For hours, the transmissions continued. Katie listened to each voice, asking questions and learning about the civilization that everyone had feared. What she discovered was that the Devourer horde wasn't evil. They were broken. We heard your first message. One of the oldest voices told her. The one where you spoke of missing your mother. It reminded us of things we had forgotten, feelings we had not experienced in centuries. Is that why you came here? Katie asked into her microphone. We came because your species interests us. You broadcast for 30 years with no response, but you did not stop trying. And when one small voice spoke from the heart, you listened to it. You gave importance to a child's words. This is not something we have seen before. Katie thought about this for a moment. Then she asked the question that would change everything. Do you want to stop being angry? Do you want to remember how to care about things again? The silence that followed lasted for almost an hour. Katie waited patiently, drawing pictures while the most feared civilization in the galaxy considered her question. Finally, the voices came back. But this time, they sounded different, less mechanical, more uncertain. We do not know if we can change, they said. We have been what we are for so long. We have forgotten how to be anything else. But maybe you could learn again, Katie said. Like how you learned to speak English to talk to me. Maybe you could learn to be friends with people instead of hurting them. And if we cannot, if we try and fail? Katie smiled. Then at least you tried. That's what my mom always said. Trying is the most important part. Over the next several days, something unprecedented happened. The Devourer horde ships, which had been heading toward Earth to consume another civilization, stopped moving. They hung in space just outside the solar system, not attacking but not leaving either. The healers and other alien civilizations that had been preparing to evacuate or defend Earth were amazed. No one had ever seen the Devourers hesitate before. Katie continued talking to them every day. She learned their real names, not the fearsome title others had given them. They were the Wanderers, The lost ones, the forgotten. Species that had been homeless for so long they had forgotten what home felt like. "I have an idea," Katie announced during one of their conversations. "What if instead of taking things from planets, you helped fix things that were broken?" The healer said they've been trying to help people all over the galaxy, but there's too much work for them to do alone. Maybe you could help them. The idea was so simple that none of the adult experts had thought of it. Turn the galaxy's greatest destroyers into its greatest rebuilders. The first joint mission between the healers and the former Devourer horde was a damaged planet in a distant star system. The Wanderers used their powerful ships to move debris and clear space lanes, while the healers worked to restore the planet's atmosphere and help the survivors. It worked. Within months, the partnership had expanded across the galaxy. The Wanderers found purpose in creation instead of destruction. The healers found the strength they needed to help more civilizations, and other species began joining the effort, creating the first truly united galactic community. Katie watched all of this happen from her small office at the Deep Space Monitoring Station. She continued her daily conversations with civilizations across the galaxy, but now the topics were different. Instead of talking about fear and threats, they talked about hopes and dreams and plans for the future. 1 year after her first accidental broadcast, Katie received a special message from her friends among the stars. "Small voice who changed the galaxy," the message began. It was spoken by dozens of different species all working together. "You asked us to tell your mother that you were brave. We want you to know that your mother would be very proud. You taught us all something important." "What did I teach you?" Katie asked. "You taught us that the most powerful force in the universe is not weapons or technology or fear. It is a kind heart that reaches out to others, even when they seem unreachable. You taught us that everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were yesterday." Katie smiled and spoke into her microphone one more time. "Tell my mom I made friends with everyone just like she taught me. Tell her that nobody has to be alone anymore." Outside the station, under stars that were no longer silent, Katie's words traveled across the galaxy. The child who had accidentally started the most important conversation in human history had finished it by proving that the smallest voice, speaking from the heart, could change everything. The universe had finally learned what it meant to be human, and in learning that lesson, it had become a better place for everyone.